Winters.
I'm joined in studio this morning by Congresswoman Yvette Herrell. How are you doing this morning?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, thanks for taking the time out of your incredibly busy schedule to take some time with us. We appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's been a couple of days.
Oh my goodness. There's just, pick a subject matter. It's incredible as we're all watching what's unfolding in Afghanistan, and it changes by the minute. And of course, our office has been inundated with calls, concerns. Obviously, there are so many Americans left in Afghanistan. And so we're working with the State Department. We're putting pressure on them to help us remove the Americans first out of Afghanistan. But of course, you're watching what we see as well.
Right.
And so those efforts, I'm concerned for the Americans. We should have gotten the Americans out first.
And this is the thing. Everyone's has been united on the idea that this is something that needed to happen. But the way that it happened, the implementation was just completely backwards.
Oh, it absolutely was. And I think one of the statements that I saw the president made that was very concerning to me is that this has never been about nation building. Yes, it has. We went there to help build a nation, and we have kept every threat in terms of terrorist threats from the American people from happening in America because of our presence in Afghanistan. And now we've diminished that. And what's more concerning to me is our border is wide open.
Right.
We're not checking anybody, any status. We know that known criminals from the FBI's most wanted list have come through our southern border. Mm-hmm. And now with the inability to have proper vetting for the Afghanistans that are coming over, we are setting ourselves up for a terrorist attack. We are putting the American people in harm's way. We are less safe than we were just 7 months ago. And that's what the American people need to be thinking about.
One of the things that's kind of unnerving to me is the Taliban in general has kind of an adherence to and an obsession with dates, with historical dates, with numbers, with numerology. And we're literally a month away from the 20th anniversary of the biggest terrorist attack on domestic soil. It's absolutely mind-blowing that all this is going down right before literally the anniversary of all that.
Right, it really is. And of course, we've seen, posts on Facebook, we've seen posts, people writing emails and different things. And it is concerning because you're right, just everything's so date-centric. Mm-hmm. And I'm, concerned about what the next number of days looks like for the Americans and the Christians and the helpers, that the Afghanistan people that actually helped over the last number of years. But think about it, 20 years we've been present in that country. So you have young women that are 19, 20 years old who have never lived under the Taliban regime. Right. And this is going to be a very different lifestyle for them if they're there. And what I can't believe, and I'm certainly glad to see Fox News reporting on it, is where is Vice President Harris? Where are the people that are standing up for women's rights, for women's groups? Nancy Pelosi's calling us back to D.C. next week to start voting on an infrastructure bill that is absolute disaster. It's expensive. And the American people, are going to get, I think, hoodwinked again because the focus is going to be on Afghanistan instead of this bloated government, this overspending, and a bill that absolutely does nothing to help with actual infrastructure immediately. And we will see some money in there for it, but it's spread out over 5 years. But what they don't talk about in the bill is, the $110 billion to make America's highways less racist. What is that? How does that even look?
What?
Yeah. These are the kind of things that are in the infrastructure bill. And I am so disgusted with the 19 Republican senators that voted for it. It's time we stand on American principle, American values, listen to our constituents, and be the voice of the people. And everyone that I have talked to in the 2nd Congressional is so upset over that vote passing the Senate with the help of the 19 Republicans that voted with the Democrats.
Sure. And that's what it comes down to is things like this wouldn't get pushed through if it weren't for, a few bad hands, so to speak, a few bad actors. And I don't know, it's hard to watch from this perspective, but I can't imagine what it's like from your perspective being in the thick of it, so to speak. Being one of the
we always knew, before anything else, I definitely want to say this has truly been my greatest honor to serve in this capacity. And obviously I knew it would be tough. I knew it would be hard. But I don't think anybody could have understood or seen the magnitude of issues that we'd be facing as a state and as a nation right off the bat. And I'm so grateful for our law enforcement and for our military servicemen and women, their families, and our veterans. That is what has made America great. That's been the backbone of strength for our nation since we became a republic. And I feel like we've done such a disservice to our men and women in blue because of this defunding the police. And what Americans, I think, are getting really tired of, and certainly I know they are in New Mexico, is the double standard.
Absolutely.
I mean, we're going to allow the border to be wide open. Even our two senators, both the New Mexico senators, voted against mandatory testing for those coming across the southern border. How is that right when our governor is going to implement the statewide mask mandate?
Right.
Regardless of vaccination status. And the truth is, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I get the seriousness of this disease. But what is more troubling to me is this grotesque government overreach. This is now about our freedoms, our liberty, our prosperity as a nation, and the future generations that we hope to live in a country as great as we grew up in.
Absolutely. It's literally cutting off Main Street.
Oh, of course.
If you look at it from the perspective of, the last pandemic when everything was shut down, sure, Walmart and Target got to stay open. What about the mom and pop shops?
That's right.
It's cutting off the livelihoods and of businesses. And what's funny, and I actually pointed this out to somebody a couple of days ago, it seems like we're exactly in the same place we were last year, only we're a lot less patient as like a nation. We're all just kind of up
I think we're in the
arms.
exact same place with this government overreach, but I think it's worse. Look at the bigger picture. We have now given up our energy independence. We have two of the biggest producing counties in this district, and now we're calling on OPEC to start drilling. I mean, we turned a blind eye to the Nord 2 pipeline when we shut down the Keystone pipeline. Right. Our borders are wide open. We're not funding the police like they need to be. We're ignoring BLM and the riots that are happening all over the country. They are hell-bent on climate change, climate justice, equality, and trying to continue to utilize education, our education system, to indoctrinate our kids with this critical race theory. I mean, we're where we are a year ago, only 10 times worse, because we are not the strength of the America that we were under the Trump administration. And now globally, we are a laughing stock, and we have incompetency in the White House. And that is just the truth of the matter. And I think Americans are getting getting tired of the hypocrisy, the double standard. And I think this mask mandate, I can't even make myself take this governor serious until she takes our border serious. Because to me, it's a double standard. And I do not believe that we should be the pawns used in her political career because she said so. And I think it's time we use our collective voices. And as Congress, we need to work on behalf of the people.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. And you're one of the few that's out there, doing the work that should be done. The mask mandate is a whole other thing. I mean, it's absolute. It feels like this whole last 18 months has basically been, let's just throw stuff against a wall and see what sticks.
That's exactly right. Yeah, it really has been. And that's part of the problem is this. There's been so much information thrown at the public. You don't really know what to believe. You don't know if there is science. Is it real? Every day you'll see the masks work. They don't work. The vaccines work. They don't work. There's, and I think what people are questioning now is folks that did get vaccinated, and now they're seeing an uptick in those cases. But here's the killer. We know for a fact a 900% uptick in COVID cases coming across our southern border in the first 2 weeks of July. I'm not saying shutting our border down eliminates all COVID,
right,
but it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand that once we secure our border, not only for the COVID, but for the concern now I have for terrorist attacks on our nation. Right. That is just common sense. And sadly, most of the people in office right now have little or none. And this is what's concerning to me and to the American people, and certainly to the people of the 2nd Congressional District.
Absolutely. So you said you go back next week. You're being flown back to the front lines, so to speak.
Yeah.
What's it been like out there?
I tell you, what I do appreciate is our nation as a whole, the history in which we were built on, the monuments. It's such an incredible opportunity to just see the Capitol and think, I work there. I represent the voice of so many people. And it's humbling because I know every decision I make is going to affect somebody's life. I mean, not just in New Mexico, but in this entire country. Sure. So it's very humbling, and I'm just so very honored. And I think for me, I tell people all the time, that I can only do my job with the right people around me. And by that, I mean, I am so blessed. I have the best staff ever, both in New Mexico and in D.C. I mean, everybody that we hired brought a willingness to work on behalf of the American people, but also, an experience level. They come with different backgrounds, and we have been able to hit the ground running. And I tell you, every one of them work harder than I do. I just like to talk in front of groups and talk on microphones, but we've been blessed. But it's not easy because, I think several years ago, you could look at one or two big political issues that we would talk about. Maybe it was Obamacare or taxes.
Sure.
Now, it's oil and gas, it's education, it's funding our military, it's the southern border, it's now Afghanistan. It's you just pick a topic and I can tell you about a policy that we're pushing back on, or trying to improve. And so just very blessed by the staff around me and the relationships in New Mexico. There's no way to know everything about everything. I mean, a lot of politicians think they do.
Sure.
But you know what? The reality is we need good, solid relationships from business owners, from everybody that's going to be impacted by decisions in Washington. So I'm very proud of the fact that our entire team, we're always reaching out. We have several advisory committees set up, law enforcement, border, small business, ag. So we're in communication with these different industries and stakeholders frequently. And I think that's very helpful to the success of our office.
Absolutely. And you guys, your office specifically and the folks that are working with you, I mean, just out there, making it happen, but it's got to feel like you're on a treadmill sometimes. Like you're
it's
just
Groundhog Day.
Yeah. It's the same thing over and over again. Exactly.
Yeah. For a few days there, maybe a few weeks in DC, I just, it was a little bit depressing because you're watching from where I sit. The truth is I see the dismantling of our nation, one horrible policy or executive order at a time. And I think now the ripple effect, people around the nation and the state are starting to feel the impacts of these bad decisions. And it was a little discerning at first, but then I understood, I know God put me here for a reason. God put these people in my life on our team for a reason. We have a platform. And honestly, we need more God in the picture. And, because the truth is the only one that's not being surprised by what's happening on a global scale is God. And we've got to come back to our roots and be steadfast. And I think our resolve is being tested. Our faith is being tested. And I just recognize the blessing of the ability to use this platform to, one, tell truth to the people that need to hear it. We speak a lot of truth out of our office because I don't think New Mexicans need sugarcoating. Right. They're all adults. They're voters. They are stakeholders in their lives, their livelihoods, and their family's future. And they need to know exactly what this government is doing. And so we've been very, very lucky to be able to portray those messages out district-wide.
Yeah, and you touched on something right there that we as New Mexicans, as adults, as grown-ups, we know how to pull our pants up, lift ourselves up and get to work and get the job done. It's like we don't necessarily have to be mollycoddled.
That's right.
And it just constantly feels like we're being taken by the hand and led into a certain direction. And New Mexicans are fighting back.
They need to. And I'm so proud of them. They need to. I mean, and for so many years, I think conservatives, I won't even say just Republicans, I would say conservatives in general, I think found some sense of complacency in government because at one day, at one point in time in the history of our nation, you wanted to trust the elected official because all the promises, you hear them, I hear them. Sure. And it's a very different thing to say what you mean and mean what you say and say things to get elected. And unfortunately, we see both sides of the aisle. I mean, look at the 19 senators that, to me, sold out the strength of our America by voting for that infrastructure bill. And that's just the first step. So it's time we understand, the tail is wagging the dog. We need to change that. And we need to take the voices of the people that we know believe in our ability. We need to take those voices to Washington, D.C. It's not about what Yvette Herrell wants. It's about what's good for America, what's good for 2nd Congressional District, what's good for New Mexico. And that's what I think is missing in the bubble of Washington, D.C. I equate it to a snow globe.
Right.
You shake it up, you got all these little snowflakes and these special interest groups and environmentalists running the show. But when you get back to reality, and that's why we invited Vice President Harris to the border, come down and visit the reality that New Mexico lives in every day. Come visit, the people that are losing their livelihoods and their future because of their inability to take action on the border. And now, we can focus that also to our oil and gas industry. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. So the reality is America. The twilight zone is Washington, D.C. And so we've got to stay focused on what is important to our districts and to the people that sent us there.
And that's one thing I've always admired about you is you have that ability to almost be like have the strabismus. I was trying to think of the term, the lazy eye almost of keep an eye on New Mexico and keep an eye on DC at the same time.
Yeah,
you're very good at keeping focused on both.
Thank you. But that stems back to just the communication in the district and the amazing team, that we have.
Yeah, lots of tentacles in lots of places.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the schools for a second. It's been this whole thing has been insane. I mean, it's every day, parents are tuned in. Did we get 4 cases? The number 4, first of all, seems absolutely insane when you've got thousands of students and faculty inside of one building. To limit it to 4 and then everything's shut down. And then there's the preemptive or the preventative measures so that they can keep playing sports. It's all just, it just seems like such a mess. It's so convoluted.
Yeah, the short answer I have is I have more faith in the people of the 2nd Congressional District than I do in this government. And I believe that our adults are quite capable of making decisions that are going to be impactful to their families, their livelihoods, and get it. We all get it. No one's diminishing the seriousness of COVID. We're not.
Right.
But I think we have to look at the bigger picture and the underlining overreach of the federal government and now the state government. We need to allow people to live and prosper and grow their businesses. And we can't because we're being hamstrung by our own government. And that is, to me, one of the biggest threats in our nation is our very own government. And what happens is you've got good, solid people, conservatives, business owners, free markets, free market people, federalists that want to see a bigger, stronger America in terms of economic growth. But we're hamstrung with the threat of we're going to sue you, we're going to fine you, we're going to audit you, we're not going to give you the scholarship to your child. The government is out of control. And I think we talked about it off air a little bit. It is time that we stand on principle, on values, what our nation was founded on. And Mark Levin's got it right. We are on a fast track to American Marxism. Our country will not recover if Americans don't, one, take a step. And the best comment I have read and seen, I wish I made this up, was, individual courage is necessary. Wait, I'll have to think on this because it was really great. I'll think about it before we get off the air. But I think it was something like individual courage is necessary. Consequences can be shared, so we can come together as an American people and take that step of courage, safety in numbers. And when the consequences come, we can share those. I mean, that's going to be a shared situation. But what's at stake here is our absolute freedom as a nation. I don't want to look back on our country 3, 5, 10 years from now and see a mirror image of Venezuela or Cuba. I mean, we're better than that. And so I think we all recognize that we are not better than we were 7 months ago under this administration. Point to anything and it's a disaster. But now the very essence of American exceptionalism is at stake. And that is what I think is concerning to people.
I heard a term, this is years ago, called the totalitarian tiptoe. And it's always stuck in my head. How it's basically we've been inching ever so closer, just inch by inch to that level, to Marxism, to socialism, to that that total government control and everything just being completely crazy. It just feels like we've been breakneck speed these last several years. I mean,
it's just like running to the cliff and jumping off with no even thought, no plan, Afghanistan's a great example. Why didn't we get the Americans out of there first? Why did we remove military personnel? And this was not even strategic. It was absolute. I'm not the military expert here, but even I could see that we should have gotten the American people out of there first. We should have gotten our allies out of there second, our equipment, and then moved on. But we didn't do it that way. Now we've just got it's just a disaster that's happening over there.
I 100% agree. Absolutely. So we are getting the eye that we need to wrap things up here. So what do we do? Where do we go from here?
Well, first off, I think, number one, we need to be praying about this, praying for our state, for our country, for our leaders. But number two, we cannot be timid. I think I said it earlier. I think we are now facing a test of our resolve, our resilience, and our reliance on God. We have got to use our voices. And I'm talking from the lowest level of elected officials, whether it's school boards or city council, county, state, federal. We have got to start getting our voices as Americans heard on every level, and we can't be timid. I mean, it's time to press in. If you don't like what's going on now, you're going to hate it in about 3 years or 2 years or 6 months if we don't stand on principle and on what is right. And right now we all see we're going down a path that is not healthy for our nation. So I'm grateful to be able to get on with you, talk about these things, encourage people. And it's going to take a bunch of just patriot, freedom-loving Americans, doesn't matter the party, because guess what? We're way past party affiliation. Right now, what we're fighting for is the American treasure, the American values. It doesn't matter the party, it's people right now.
Absolutely right.
So I just, we're doing our job, and we're always here to help. And now it's time for Americans to say, you know what, we're getting off the sidelines, because every time we're getting punched, we're just getting gut punched every day. We're done with that. Let's put the government in check and start having some accountability, and make sure that we're saving a nation that we know is worth standing for, it's worth fighting for, and obviously it's worth dying for.
Absolutely. Congresswoman, thank you so much for your time.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
having you, and we'll talk to you next time you're in town.
Sounds good. Thank you for having me.
Appreciate you.
Day.